Hello. This video is going to help you learn how to decide or rate a particular objective. We've already discussed the COLT Instructor Worksheet. Again, that's a worksheet that an instructor can fill out to give the peer review team or person reviewing the course information that will help them as they go through the COLT instrument in finding and locating certain objectives. So they go into a course that they may not be familiar with, and they can find things quicker. So you can use that, obviously, to help you. You can also use the COLT repository, which we talked about earlier in the module, and we have links to. That has exemplars of each of the objectives and examples from different campuses for each of the 54 and soon to be 58 objectives in the instrument that you can use as a reference if you need to as you're going through and reviewing a course. And then of course we have that peer review rating instrument online. Here's the link, and as you're going through reviewing a course you can fill that out. It also includes now a feedback box after each objective that you can give feedback into. Okay, but we need to focus on how do we give a rating when we're reviewing something. So here are a few things to consider as we rate. One, get all your things and tools out and ready before you start reviewing. This will greatly reduce your time. It does take a while to review. Keep in mind you can always save your instrument if you're using the CSU online one as you go and come back to it later. You might want to have the COLT repository open. If your instructor filled out an instructor worksheet or they conducted their own self-review, you might want to have those printed out or handy. And then, of course, you're going to want to have access to the course. If you have all those things, that'll make reviewing a lot quicker and easier. The second thing to remember is get yourself in a student frame of mind. You're not going in with any bias or perfectionism. You want to go in, you're a student. Would a student find it? How effective is it? And if it even exists in the course at all. You're not looking for perfection. So, if you're going through the rating chart, and we'll take an example in a minute, and there'll be a couple more examples within this module that I will actually walk through my thought process on how I give it a rating. A rating of 2 or a 3 means the objective is met. And what we're really focusing on here is met or not met. We're not going to get bogged down in the individual rating scores when we're doing a peer review. That may be more appropriate if we're for the awards portion of the COLT program, where you're counting up, who has the most 3s or the best examples and giving them a score. However, in a peer review, what's more important is whether they've met or not met that objective, especially if they're trying to meet the core objectives. Currently, there are around 24 core objectives, and those are extremely important for them to meet in order to even get an online course off the ground and running in some sort of quality way. So if you give them a rating of a 2 or a 3, the objective is considered met. And a 2 means there's clear evidence that it exists, however there's some room for enhancement. And you might say to yourself, well, there's always going to be room for some enhancement. But what we're really looking for is the difference between 2 and 3 is a 3 is an exemplar. That's something that is a best practice. So let's use icebreaker, for example. Forum, everybody pretty much uses a forum for an icebreaker, and maybe they just ask 3 simple questions: what's your major, why are you taking this class, etc. Well, that meets it, but you could offer some suggestions for enhancement. Maybe you offer them different examples of icebreaker activities. Maybe you recommend they use the glossary tool with the HTML block where a student's picture comes up each day and that student's highlighted. And that would be a distinction between a 2 or a 3. But both of those are going to be met, and from an instructor standpoint, either one of those is great. Where things get more important from an instructor standpoint is whether they got a 0 or a 1. Now, we do have a not applicable rating. That would be for a hybrid course, let's say, where something doesn't apply, and you would just put NA. 0, of course, means it doesn't exist or you couldn't found it. I like to use the 5-minute rule. Peer reviewing an entire course can take a long time, over an hour in most cases, and the average from our campus has been around 2 hours. And I have a rule. I tell people if it takes you more than 5 minutes looking around to find something and you don't find it, put a 0 and put a note, I could not find it in your course. That way the instructor can come back when they see the review and say, oh, I did have that, it was here. And of course then you would come back with, well, it took me, I couldn't even find it after 5 minutes, so here's what you're going to want to do, and that's where you would give them proper feedback and how to fix that. And then that would quickly move them back up to that 2 status. Now a 1 is there's some evidence that it exists, but it clearly needs to be further developed or it just isn't adequate. Sometimes this might be hard distinction between that 1 and 2. It's really going to be up to, you know, as a student, again, putting yourself in that frame of reference. Is this fully adequate for them? Is the information clear? Could they put more to make it better for the student? But that would be not met. And in this case of a 1, you're going to really want to give them some concrete and great feedback, which we talk about in one of our modules upcoming. So that's how you determine a rating. Again, to recap, you're focusing on met versus not met. You're not going to get into an argument over a 2 versus a 3. Either one of those is good, and the objective has been met in that case. A rating of a 1 or a 0 has not been met, and those are the ones your faculty or your instructor are going to want to start on first and incorporate those into their course. The 5-minute rule, if you can't find it in 5 minutes, move on. Keep a student perspective. And don't look for perfection. Again, everybody has their own way of doing things. If you look for that and keep those in mind when you're reviewing, you won't have any problems. And I'm going to give you a quick example. If we look at 1.4, which is online etiquette, this is something that's either there or isn't there, and we even have links in the repository to samples that a faculty member could just take and use for themselves. So let's say you were in this course, and the first place you would most likely look is the syllabus. Let's say you come to the syllabus, however, and you don't see anything on online etiquette or netiquette. The next place you might look is the first forum. Well, maybe they talk about it, you know, when the students are getting ready to do their first forum. If you don't find it in there, you might check the second forum. By now you're approaching that 5-minute rule, so in this case I would give them a 0 for that particular objective and say I could not find anything on netiquette. Here's a link to the repository which has great examples. Feel free to put those in your syllabus if you don't have it, and that's all you have to do. Hopefully this has been helpful, and there'll be several other examples within this module as I talk through giving ratings.